Well, many of us have suspected that Australians pay disproportionately high prices for downloaded music, DVDs and also software. And now a parliamentary inquiry has confirmed it. But the Department of Broadband, Communications and the Digital Economy has played down the case for tougher laws that would force foreign companies to charge Australians less. We'll talk more about this. I'm joined by technology analyst Ross Dawson. Thanks for coming in today.
Pleasure.
Now, this inquiry has found that downloading the film Toy Story, for example, from iTunes costs $25 for Australians. That's more than double what it costs to get overseas. And Microsoft Windows 7 costs up to $279 in Australia, compared with $200 in the US and up to $171 in Britain. So what exactly is going on here?
Well, there's two things. One is that there are some additional costs to selling things in Australia, which can be marketing, can be tax, can be various labour costs and so on. But the other part, and usually the more important part, is that companies like to break down markets as small as possible and have different pricing, basically as high pricing as they can possibly support in each market. So the reality is that these companies are saying, well, there is a discrete competition, there's less competition, there's people prepared to pay more, so we will charge more. So that's those two pieces are contributing to these higher prices.
And less people in the market, only 20-odd million people in Australia compared to more than 360 million in the US, for example. Now, Apple, the owner of iTunes, declined to comment to this parliamentary inquiry. Microsoft's submission blamed a range of factors, including some of the ones you just mentioned, relatively high costs of labour, rent and transport. But essentially, we're talking about software downloads. So how much rent, transport and labour costs is required here?
Well, in the case of software, so for example, when Microsoft is selling the same software around the world, probably the most significant thing is their marketing costs. So Microsoft in Australia is largely a sales and marketing organization for software that's developed overseas. So they have people, they have infrastructure, they have advertising. So whenever we are buying a product of any kind, we are paying for the advertising, we are paying for the marketing. And so that's absolutely part of the additional cost of what's going on there. But in the case of Apple and iTunes, this is entertainment. So in fact, Apple is not the owner of this content. They are only licensing it. So we can't, when we say that a movie is twice the price that in Australia that is overseas, we don't know how much of that is the studios, the movie studios who are charging more to license that to Australia, and how much Apple is charging more for that. And the indications are that in fact the studios are the ones who are saying, these are different markets, these are different pricing, we can charge more. So both the connection of the studios charging more for the licensing costs and the distributors are in some ways creating, very highly inflated prices.
So the distributors may be getting in the way there, but in Microsoft's case, to be blaming things like transport costs and rent, does that stack up?
No, essentially.
No. Okay. Now, despite the consumer anger over this, the government says that intervention is not required because it says the natural forces of demand and supply will eventually push prices down in Australia. But do you think the federal government needs to do more on this?
Market intervention is not the best step. I mean, part of the context here is that we have the National Broadband Network, and both all people in government and politics recognize that we do need to connect Australians. However, the challenge is that even if we are well connected, if we still have to pay more for the digital goods that we get on the internet, then we're not giving these opportunities to disadvantage. We're not giving the opportunities to Australia. So these are very important issues, yet we can't legislate on prices. We can't tell people what price to charge. Anything that we can do to encourage competition, we can do. In the case of software products, we can encourage local software development, for example. In the case of entertainment products, we are be held to the studios which do have the content which people want to buy.
Yeah, no doubt it would be difficult for authorities to enforce any regulations over pricing, given that there are so many vendors of software these days. But a lot of Australians will say that they're turning to illegal downloads. Does the disproportionate pricing here in Australia lure more Australians down that path?
There's probably some Australians which probably not so much out of price than frustration. So two things have driven piracy. One is the fact that these things are not available. So you say, well, if I can't get it, then I'll download it illegally. The other is saying, well, this is too expensive. I'll get this for free or cheaper. I think in many cases people are prepared to pay, but if they feel that it is unfair and they're having to pay too much, that will sometimes encourage them to go to illegal means.